If you are owning a steel plant or if you're owning a power plant, then it's a different kind of respect than other companies. Greater advantage for the society. And this is something very important. The average lifestyle of human beings, of general people in a society, is directly proportional to the presence of heavy industry in that country or in that region. The result is very simple. If you're thinking about a huge plant, a huge steel plant, a power plant, an aluminum plant, a machine tool plant, a huge one, a car plant, an automotive, it doesn't require only engineers. It requires a lot of persons. It requires local transport people who can transport you from one door of the plant to other. It requires canteens inside. So it doesn't only provide job to the engineers or highly educated people, it provides jobs also for the low scale earners, and that means a greater advantage for the society, having all combined. This is something we have seen in case of England. If you're aware, England before the 1970s, 1980s was used to be a powerhouse in terms of heavy industry. They have really a number of coal mines. They have a lot of iron and steel works. Now, after 70s or 80s, they gradually closed all their coal mines, their steel industry, and what right now they are is a completely service-based economy. Now, service-based economy is very good, but it doesn't elevate the level of the society in general to the higher above, because if you think about the structure that we have in sector 5 that much, it is mostly a very, very concentrated type of people without much variation. So of course, there are local people who are selling teas on the footpath so that these people can go out and have a tea or have a coffee or something to eat. But the point is, it is not an organized sector. If for a heavy industry, everything comes to be an organized sector, and that's how it's socially and politically impacting. So what could be your areas of chance in case of heavy engineering sector? As I have said, only maybe less than one person in a billion or million can start a new steel plant or a new power plant or a new machine tool plant on his own. You have to start step by step from the beginning. A very good example is digitalization. That is something you know all about. Right now, you have seen all the robots, all the plant operations are getting less and less manpower dependent every day. And they require solutions to reduce their manpower, to increase their safety, everything. So if you have some solutions, if you can offer it to the industry, if it's competitive, they will be gladly take it. Other high-tech solutions, like which don't need a lot of investment. For instance, drones, just as an example, are very, very important nowadays for surveillance. And if you're thinking about mining, drone surveillance is very important because it shows you how the operation is moving on, if somebody is injured somewhere, if somebody is not found anywhere on the surface of the mine. This is an example. And finally, offering new innovative technologies. That's how we have started. I will share the story in a very, very gist because this will be too much technical, but I will give you an idea what we did. So inside of the heavy industry, there are lots of scopes of enhancement of new innovative technologies. I will give you a very small example. Now, if you are in the world of industry, two terms should be very, very important for you. The first one is CapEx and the second one is OpEx. CapEx means capital expense or capital expenditure. That means if you want to build a factory, if you want to build a plant, you need a CapEx for buying the structure, for buying the machine. And this is something is a must when you're starting. And then what is called OpEx, that means the operating expenditure or operating expenses. So this is your day-to-day expenses, your raw material cost, your power requirement, your salary of your people, depreciation, other costs, consumables, everything. Now, why I have chosen this example? Here, if you look at the OPEX distribution, day-to-day cost, operating expense, 61% of a steel plant is raw material. That's a huge one. So 61% and raw materials means which one? Iron ore, coal, limestone, all of these things. Now imagine, this is something I'm giving you some numbers which are quite imperceivable, maybe which may sound, but that's how it is in the world of metallurgy. A 1 million ton per year steel plants based on blast furnace requires a capacity investment of $1.1 billion. Not million, but billion. And that's how the question comes. And this is the question that you don't invest everything yourself. But however, if you come to the OPEX point of view, let's say you have an OPEX of 10 million ton per day, $10 million per day. And on the raw material side, on any side, if you can even reduce 1 to 2% cost by your new technology, some other solutions that you can provide, you will save an immense amount to the plant, and the plants will really, really love to have your technology and give you the opportunity to implement your technology or your solution to the plant so that they can reduce their costs. Because at the end of the year, the balance sheet, 1% less will come into hundreds of millions of dollars. That's how the basic philosophy of higher industry, it goes on the philosophy of scale. So for instance, the iron ore ship, if comes, normally an iron ore ship that comes from Australia or some other places to India, or India exports some low quality iron ores also. One ship is minimum 50,000 tons, and 50,000 tons and 1 ton of iron ore is $200. So you can do the math. One shipment causes $10 million. Now, if so much of a high amount of commodity, if you can save even a little bit less than the material consumption, the companies are very happy. So that's how I would like to give you how we started our whole thing. So we started for our company, it's just like for our own story, we started with new technology development. So what was the technology? If you know some steel plants, you will see nearby steel plant humongous mountains of wastes from the steel plant. And these wastes have a lot of iron and carbon into it. So we patented a technology of making iron back from it again. So that's what was our start. Parallelly, we started consulting service because we have a huge network everywhere. And consulting is something you will understand, technical consulting, not now, but later on in your life, when you are more into the industry. And there is a heavy demand of field-specific or subject-specific consultants. But everything was all right. Then came that bloody COVID in last year, in 2020. And I remember in April or May, in 2 weeks, we lost 8 of our projects. So we thought that we have to diversify somehow. And that's when we came to the idea of sourcing, of trading and arbitrage of raw materials. Because in this world, whatever happens, business goes on one thing. There is a buyer and there is a seller. If you have something to buy and if you have something to sell, and if you connect them together, there is always business. That's exactly the thing as Uber does in terms of taxi. You know, there are guys who wants to go from one point to another one, and there are people who are driving the taxi who want to take you from that point. What does Uber do? Uber connects both of them and get money from that. So that's how, for raw material business, for trading, we took a similar business model. And the fourth thing, I got this idea from a very old American gentleman. He was in this business for the last 70 years. He's a very old man. Use plant and machinery, because if you see a plant, you think that its life is over. No, a small refurbishment, change to somewhere else, and it works as a new. So this is another business we came into. So the whole business, the whole point is survival by diversification. You have to keep your mind open how you can diversify to mitigate the potential risks. So these are our present locations. Our head office is located in a small town called Leoben-Donawitz in Austria. We have some small overseas offices, especially our office in Shanghai is quite strong in terms of raw material trading and those businesses. And this is a small management team. Let's go further. Yeah. So now there are certain misconceptions about pragmatic. People always say, follow your passion. No, absolute bad idea. If you are only following your passion, you may be a very good person, but you may not be able to flourish in business. Be pragmatic. If you are passionate about doing something, but the time or the situation doesn't allow you, no, don't do it. Try to find a way to survive, because you can continue your passion all the time. And as I always say, and somebody also said, I understand, I like the quote very much, that if you need motivation to be an entrepreneur from someone else, then really it is not for you. Because you would be the only person who will be motivating and validating yourselves. This urge will come from yourself or from the team itself. If you don't have that urge, or you think you need motivation, then may not be this is the right selection for you. Next, a one-man show? No, never. It doesn't work. You need a team, be it your friends, be it some of the office colleagues you meet and you decide all together to leave the company and start a business, be it your parents, be it your relatives. You need a team. You cannot do it alone. And the misconception is you need a lot of money to start. No, you need some small amount of money to start, but what you need is to raise your capital. And for that reason, contact to banks are very important. Now, banks, as we see in India, people have the idea that banks are only going for staying in long queues and passbook update. No, banks have a much higher purpose in the economics, and banks provide you the capital for business. And this is something that the banks, it's a merchant type of banking, which we don't normally face from every day. A little bit you can see if you're into share trading, if you have a demat account, you can see how the bank works. But bank gives you some very important thing. Bank gives you capital, because when the Jindals started their new plant in Angul 10 to 15 years before, they took at least 80% in terms of bank loans, because everybody knows that doesn't work. You cannot fund everything from your own. So, and Jindals, it's a very, very, very good way of doing business. So they paid back all of their loans a couple of years back, which of course banks have also fraudulent practices. And you know some of the very recent examples in terms of Nirav Modi or some of those guys. But that's not my point. But banks is a very, very important part of startups or founding or company founding ecosystem. And then networking has no alternative. This is something